right now, as I sit here, that's where I'm going to say it. And I think the reason for me going to that is because of the fact that if I go too early, then I'm almost admitting, or if I go earlier, I'm almost admitting that my dad is old, which I don't want to do yet. And the other thing with that is that it's also coming a bit too close to where I am already myself.
Hi, and welcome to 5 Random Questions, the show with unexpected questions and unfiltered answers. I'm your host, Danny Brown, and each week I'll be asking my guest 5 questions created by a random question generator. The guest has no idea what the questions are, and neither do I, which means this could go either way. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this week's episode. Today's guest is Charles Commins. Charles is the host of the award-winning It's All Cobblers to Me podcast, founder of podcast production company Vibrant Sound Media, and co-runner of the largest UK podcaster community, MIC's Podcast Club, or Mix Podcast Club. Let's get clarification on that. From Warrington in the UK, Charles spends most of his time running, be that for exercise or simply chasing his 2 kids around. So Charles, welcome to 5 Random Questions.
Hi Danny, thank you so much. That was such a lovely introduction. I'd forgotten that I'd said all those nice things about myself.
Yeah, you did not pay me at all to say that about you. And just to clarify, because I know the community that you run, and Mark, our co-friend, if you like, and one of the guys, the co-founder of Captivate, where I work, he's obviously been a part of that. Is it Mick or MIC that you call it?
It's actually Mike, as in microphone. Yes.
Makes sense, podcasting. Why did I not say Mike and I said Mick? I must be thinking Irish there.
I always say, when people think it's Mick, it's because my co-runner is called Vic. So they think that Vic must rhyme, so it's Mick. But it's not, it's Mike's Podcast Club.
Mike's podcast. And Vic, that'd be Victoria, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah, Victoria.
Awesome.
Elizabeth Turnbull, just to give a full credits check for her.
Vic is lovely, Victoria's lovely. And Charles, I used to live in Yorkshire back in I'm going to say the 90s. I moved to Canada in 2006, but I lived and worked in Yorkshire as a young adult. And I was living in Bradford and Shipley, that kind of area. So I was a massive Bradford Bulls fan, which was a rugby league team. Now, Warrington also has a really famous rugby league team in the Warrington Wolves. So, are you a fan? Are you a fan of the team?
Yeah, well, I am. I must confess, I've not been to a game this season, which, judging by how they've performed most recently, is probably a good thing. But I used to have a season ticket, probably about 10 years ago. A really good friend of mine. So I moved to Warrington in 2003 to go to university. It's sadly no longer there anymore, as with a lot of these sort of places, they've all been downsized considerably. So there was a university campus in Warrington, and it's actually, as it turns out, where Warrington Wolves now train is exactly there. They started training there just as I was finishing my final year. And so when I moved in 2003, that was just before the Wire, as they're known, moved into their new stadium, the Halliwell Jones. I don't know whether you can call a 21-year-old stadium new, but it is to us, I guess. And we went to a couple of games, me and my friends, and then one of my best friends at university actually ended up working for Warrington Wolves as their media manager. And so I would go to the rugby with him quite a lot. I had a season ticket that, he would basically not give me for free or anything, but helped me out in terms of getting. And yeah, for a number of years, I went along. And then when he left working for the club and went on to pastures new outside of rugby league, as it happened, I just kind of sort of stopped going and didn't keep up the season ticket for more than a year after he'd gone. And so then my actual going and watching them live became sporadic and is now mostly done from the comfort of my sofa. So, I've not been to a game this season. I did get to one last season, which was right at the very beginning of 2024, and it was a home win over Lee Leopards, and it was probably the last time that we were actually any good.
I mean, I haven't kept up to date with the rugby league scene. I know, like I mentioned, I was a Bulls fan, and when I watched it and went to games, like Yorkshire and Lancashire were always the areas that had the best teams. So you had Bradford, you had Leeds Rhinos, you had Warrington, you had Wigan. St Helens was also another great team. So it's, I don't know, is that still the case now, or is that fallen off?
Well, more or less. I mean, Bradford are nowhere near. They're not even in the Super League anymore because they spent far too much money, Danny, back when they were actually good. And unfortunately, administration almost killed them. So they are still going, but on a much smaller scale, I think, and they're in the Championship or whatever the league below the Super League is called. So they're still there, but and Leeds have dropped off recently as well. St Helens or Wigan, they're still the big team. Wigan, as per usual, are always winning everything at the moment. And with Warrington, as we like to say here, it's always our year, but it never actually is.
But one of these days, it's like Del Boy and sorry for our dear listeners, this is a very UK-centric conversation right now, so I apologise, we're going to switch back into normal gear. But just before we get into the random questions hot seat as well, Charles, obviously you're in Warrington, and this was a little known fact that I found out about Warrington, was that back in October 1987, it had the very first IKEA store in the UK.
It did.
You a big IKEA shopper?
I was when we first bought our house 12 years ago. Absolutely. It's funny that you say that, Danny, because I've just started a brand new podcast, which is for Warrington. It's called Warrington Scoop. And a friend of mine about a year ago started a newsletter with the same name, where basically they collate all of the events that are going on across the town in any given week, and then twice a week on a Monday and a Friday, a newsletter goes out showcasing those events that are coming up across the next few days. I basically thought it'd be great. Let's have a podcast to go with this. So we've just started releasing that. The first episode came out in July. We're going monthly, so the first week of every month. And our tagline is, "There's more to Warrington than just an IKEA." So, it's lovely. It's an old joke that John Bishop once said, I think on a Live at the Apollo BBC stand-up comedy programme. I'm not sure if it's still going, that, to be honest. There's always reruns happening. But, he made this joke about Warrington because it's equidistant, right slap bang in the middle between Liverpool and Manchester, down the M62. And he made this joke, and I can't remember exactly how it went, but essentially what he said was that the only reason to come was for the IKEA. It was a joke.
Yeah.
And I don't know why John Bishop thinks that he can say sort of things. He's from Runcorn. It's one of those. But we just thought we will take that little joke and we'll use it as our kind of strap line for our new podcast. And it's going quite well so far.
Love it. You have to get John on there, John Bishop, to come on as a guest and just challenge him on that old statement.
Yeah, that'd be the end goal, I reckon, for it. It'll be one of those. And then, of course, we'll just have to change tack and work out what the next end goal will be afterwards.
Perfect. Well, as I mentioned, and again, a slight tangent there, it was a very UK central, because I used to live up and work in Yorkshire, which is very close to Lancashire, etc. So that's kind of a little sidestep there, but it's time to bring up the random question generator. So are we ready to jump into the random question hot seat?
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this so much, Danny. I listen to this and I always think to myself, I wonder what it looks like. And now I can see before me.
Now you know. And if I ever do a video version, we'll be sure to share this too. But I've just brought up the random question generator, and question number 1, Charles. Pretty easy one, I feel, but let's see where it goes. Question 1. At what age would you consider someone to be old?
Oh, no. This is quite funny, actually. I saw I think it was a reel on Instagram the other day, which was somebody saying that they were asking the question of somebody else, much, much younger, we'd say a teenager, this exact question, and they said 20. And then it cut back to somebody else that had been watching the video who basically went, well, I might as well order my casket now then. And he was quite clearly in his early 20s. And here I was sat at 40 years of age going, oh, well, if he doesn't think he's got anything left to live for, imagine how it must feel to be me. And I did think, oh no, it's obviously something that changes, isn't it? As we get older, my daughter has just turned 11, and I'm sure that if you asked her what she would consider me to be in terms of age-wise, am I young or am I old? She would definitely say that I am old. And although partly that would be tongue-in-cheek, she would also mean it, definitely. Whereas being 40, I feel incredibly young still. And, you know, I don't like the thought of thinking, oh, I'm more or less halfway through, you know, this old life that could be. Hopefully not quite halfway through, but you never know. And so, yeah, for me, I don't like. It's a tough one, really, because so my dad is 40 years older than me, and I look at my dad, and you know he's had his health challenges in recent years, and he's clearly not as young as he once was, and it can be quite hard to sort of watch him going through that process, you know, with different challenges that life throws at him. And it's always a reminder, I think, or it has been for me, a reminder of our own mortality. Because you kind of always say, I think everybody who still has their parents with them or just believes that they'll always be there. It's only really, and I am imagining this because both of mine are still very much with me. But I imagine that most people who are, you know, it's only when they lose a parent that they then go, oh yeah, you know, that really sink, you know, and you sort of go, oh yeah, of course that's what's going to happen. We all know it. We all know it's coming at some point. So I don't know what the answer is to it. I mean, I suppose if I'm going to go as straight down the line with this as I possibly can. So my partner's granny recently passed away, bless her, and she had a very good innings. She was 94. Now, I would say that, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, Barbara, if you are listening up there, I would say that she was old at that age. So I do think it has to be, for me, probably anything 90 onwards. I think that's, right now, as I sit here, that's where I'm going to say it. And I think the reason for me going to that is because of the fact that if I go too early, then I'm almost admitting, or if I go earlier, I'm almost admitting that my dad is old, which I don't want to do yet. And the other thing with that is that it's also coming a bit too close to where I am already myself at 40. So I think we will always see ourselves as being young, regardless. I mean, it's very, very daft to say this, but yesterday I was driving home. My partner was in the car with me, and we were sat at a traffic light junction, which did also have the crossing for pedestrians on it as well, the green man, red man system that we have in the UK. And this lovely older lady who had, and she was the stereotypical older lady. She had a little bit of a hunch, and she also had one of those shopping trolley, you know, type bags that we think of and that get sort of cartoonized, if you like, in the on the telly. And she shuffled across the road just as the cars were coming at her. Now, she was a good 100 yards away, and of course, you've got to be an absolute moron if you're going to go and run over somebody from that distance away just simply because they thought that they could make it across the road before you got to them. My partner who's a nurse, went, oh, how silly, just wait for the light. Come on, you know. And I said, but in her mind, she will still feel like she's 20 or 30 years old. She won't recognise the fact, or won't want to recognise the fact, that it takes her longer to cross the road these days, and that maybe she should have. Now, if a car had got quite close to her, maybe she would have admitted it then. But that was why. And I kind of just sort of went, this is it. We all see ourselves as being very, very young. And so therefore, we never grow up in our minds. We never grow old. And it's, I guess, only really when, and again, I am, completely guessing this, it's only when maybe we get to a ripe old grand age where we're maybe then literally about to say goodbye that we then sort of go, oh yeah, I am a bit old now. Maybe it's time. I don't know. I mean, what about you, Danny? Would you go that sort of high 90s?
I'd probably go lower, only because I'm older than you by quite a bit. I'm now in my mid-50s, so I'm closer to that age. But I can also tell from, and my kids would be the same. Like my teenage son, he's 15, big football fan, or soccer for North Americans, etc. But big football fan, and he'll look at transfers. And he'll say, why is that player getting signed? He's 28, he's past it. And thinking, oh my grief, really? That's the peak for a football player in most times. But yeah, I found, at least personally, as I've gotten older, I can do less things that I used to do easily when I was 20, 30, even 40, like yourself, mate. Something simple as running up the stairs from the basement because I need to, I've been downstairs to change the laundry, I'm coming back up to let the dogs out, something like that. And then my knee started creaking, thinking, you know what? That wouldn't have happened even just 5 years ago. So I feel as you get older, and there was someone famous that mentioned this, and I can't recall who it was. They were in an interview, but they said that you're getting old when all the people around you start to die, and you have less people around you. So whether that's friends, family, relatives, whatever that looks like, partners, because as you reach a certain age, if you're gone by a natural death and not a tragedy or an accident or something like that, you expect people to reach a certain age,
Yeah.
if they're not sick. So if that's the case and people are starting to drop, for want of a better description, as you say, you're thinking, yeah, maybe I'm getting a bit old. So for me, I think I would maybe go, I'm going to say maybe 80. So not too much. But if you're going by the old sort of 70 years and 10 as an average age, so like 70 years old is a good innings, then 80 is kind of up there. But again, it really depends, again, where you live in the world, what your economic situation is, because that also plays into the part, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're bang on there with that, I think. I like the fact that, you talk about how you go up the stairs and you think, oh yeah, just run up the stairs dead quick, and then all of a sudden your knee clicks or something like that, and it gives you that reminder. Like, I'm at that stage in my life now where I am trying to make sure that I'm doing things right now so that I will benefit later on in life. So I'm trying to lose that bit of weight that I know I need to lose. I'm, as you said in the intro, I am a runner. I've run ultra marathons. I've run a couple of marathons and several other distances below that. And I'm trying to get myself back to the fitness that I had when I ran the ultra marathons that I did a few years ago. I'm constantly thinking and aware of the fact that it's not just because I want to do that for my own well-being now, especially like my mental health. I find running so good for that. But it's also for the benefits that I will get down the line, because I will be fitter. I will be physically fitter. I will hopefully be, just as mentally fit as I am now. And that will only be a benefit for me towards later life. And so, yeah, I guess that while I don't see myself as being old, and I would not admit that at all, I think there is a dose of realism in my mind which says, no, but you're not young either anymore. So therefore, there are things that you probably should start doing now to get yourself prepared to have it as easy as possible later. It's exactly the same as what you might think, I guess, with your finances. You might think to yourself, right, have I got a pension, or have I got some savings? Whatever. And then what can I do to make sure that I have got stuff prepared and ready for me for when I retire, if I get to that point? Similar kind of thinking, I guess, but just less about money and more about beer belly around your waist.
Well, that's one reason for sure. But yeah, it's like you say, I think kids are you mentioned it yourself, mate, kids are a great barometer. They'll have no filter, and then your own body starts to tell you, right? But yeah, it's an interesting one to start off. And I feel before we get older and might not even finish this episode because we're both so ancient, clearly, let's see what question number 2. brings up. Okay, yeah, I like this actually. It's kind of a nice little follow-on a little bit here. Question 2, Charles. Are you a risk taker? And if so, what is the biggest risk that you've taken?
Oh, I could really ruin this by just saying no, couldn't I? But I won't.
And then make me work for the living.
Yeah. I think we're all risk takers to an extent. You know, risk is something that you have to measure, isn't it? And I don't know. I think with everything in life, you do kind of, without maybe thinking about it sometimes, you are assessing the risk of anything that you're about to do. You know, it could be asking your partner to marry you. You know, you weigh up the risk of them saying no, don't you, before you ask it? Or, you know, buying a house at any particular time. You know, you weigh up the risk of, is it the right time to buy a house? You know, we were quite lucky when we bought ours. We were in a dip in the housing economy. So therefore now the house is worth a lot more than what it was when we bought it. So the risk then was, is it going to go even further down? And we thought, no, it's worth taking that risk now, buy the house now, and it's paid off. I think the biggest risk for me, well, it's really easy actually. What was the biggest risk that I have ever taken? It was quitting my full-time job in employment to go and start out completely on my own to put Vibrant Sound Media into being, and to go out and create that business, become self-employed, and become completely and utterly self-reliant on myself. Now, I mean, I will straight away highlight my privilege here immediately. My partner, Nicola, has a really, really good and consistent job. She is a nurse. She works for the NHS. She is in a vocation which is always going to be needed, right? Okay, you can argue whether or not it will be nationalised or privatised at some point in the future, but we will always need healthcare. We will always need nurses and doctors. And so therefore, there's not really a massive risk of her not bringing in some money every single month. And so that enabled me to then go, would we be okay for a couple of months if I wasn't bringing any money in whatsoever? Could we just live off of your wage? So there was an element of the risk being downplayed somewhat by that. I was also very lucky in when I left my previous employment that I had shares. It was part of the package that you got. The benefits were that there were shares in that company. And when you left, or after a certain period of time, you were then able to start selling those shares. Because I'd worked for the company over the length of number of years that you had to before you could actually start selling those, I was able to, and that gave me approximately 5 to 6 months worth of what my wages would have been, so that therefore I had those. But I mean, obviously I then had to use that money to then set up my business and buy all the equipment that I needed to do everything. So it wasn't like I literally had 6 months worth of being able to just sit there and not worry. There was still a huge risk. And the fact is that it may not have worked. It may not have taken off. I may not have got a client that would then start paying me. I may not have then turned and got a second client, and so on and so forth. There was a huge risk that I could have also just kind of frittered that money away and sat on my bottom and just not done anything. And the risk then isn't that, the business fails. The risk is then actually even bigger than that, because, well, if I don't make a go of this and it's because I've been lazy or something like that, then who knows what happens with my relationship at that point. You know, I'm putting things like paying the mortgage on the line. You know, we had a mortgage then, we still have it now. And, you know, I wasn't contributing to it. I didn't contribute to the mortgage for about the first 2 years of my business. It was a huge risk for me to take. And not just me, but my partner was within, in on that risk, so it was a far, far bigger thing than maybe I realize at the time, because you just kind of go, well, yeah, I'm going to give it a go and I'm going to do my very best to do it and to work on it and make it the success that it luckily has been for me. But yeah, it could have gone so much, the other way. And what would I have done if it had done? I mean, I don't know. I don't remember sitting there and actually weighing up the pros and cons and asking the question, what happens if this fails? At the end of the day, I guess at the end of the day, if it had failed, I'd have gone back to retail with my tail between my legs, and just tried to go and get another job. But luckily it's been a success and I didn't have to do that. So yeah.
And you mentioned obviously you've got kids. Your daughter's 11. You got two, 3?
I do. Yeah, Rory is 2.5. So yeah, Amelia, who's 11, Rory 2.5.
And how old was Vibrant? Did you have did you have your daughter at the time, or?
I did, yes. So Vibrant Sound Media is coming up. It will be 7 in September. So yes, I think Amelia was 4 when I quit my job. So we were at that stage where she was going into school, and I therefore was basically working that 9 till 3 sort of period in the week when, she was at school. It gave me that opportunity. And then because of my partner being a nurse, she only would work at that time. She was working 3 long days a week over 12.5 hours. So there would always be 2 days normally within the Monday to Friday part of the week where I would be able to go off and work for a full day on my own while Nick did whatever with Amelia or, the house, whatever it was. So it was one of those things that at the time it was nice and easy. It in terms of there was childcare, it worked out. Now, now with Rory and him being 2.5, plus my partner is now working 5 days a week instead of 3 long days. She just works 5 days, Monday to Friday, 7 till 3. That means that we share the childcare in a different way, where I have Rory in the morning, and then when Nick comes home from work, we swap, and I go to my office. And that is very, very difficult because I'm starting work at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that is traditionally, as I think most people will feel, the time of day where we all start to flag and dream of the pub or just going home and putting our feet up and things like that. So I have to, at that point, push through that feeling of wanting to relax and just get on with work. Very, very hard, but I'm managing it so far.
So do you think, like you mentioned, because obviously you had a child at the time as well, so it was a big risk, as you mentioned. If it was just you and your wife, it'd been still a risk, but less risk. But now you've got to think of a third mouth to feed if something goes wrong, and your wife's wages can't cover the drop off, if you like. And I know there's like the well known saying where if you're going to start out on your own, have at least 6 months worth of income in the bank to cover you as you get started. Do you feel like, I look now, especially post-COVID, so during COVID, not pre-COVID. So during COVID, there was obviously the big change where people worked from home because there was a lockdowns and everything, and it gave them a happier mindset because now they were more relaxed. They still got all their job done, but now they've got time to spend with their kids before school or the partner, earlier because they're not commuting an hour, 2 hours at home or whatever. And now you see a lot of companies that are forcing employees back into the office because they want them back into, especially in the financial sector and stuff like that. Where it seems it's very. So do you think now because of that, where maybe people don't have that freedom or don't have the freedom that they want to do something like what you did, is it easier, for want of a better description, or do you think people are less inclined to try maybe push out on their own now and take a risk like that because of the situation with companies and working and quick employees, etc.?
I think that there is definitely, definitely. The economy, the way it is right now, is certainly not as good as it was when I did it pre-COVID. I don't think that anybody looks at how we are in the UK, at least. I don't know exactly what it's like everywhere else, and thinks to themselves, now is a great time to go and start a business. You know, we are still in a cost of living crisis here in the UK. Everything is just ridiculously more expensive than it was, you know, even 2 years ago, let alone pre-COVID. So I think that it does make it harder. And I think the other thing that is actually happening at the moment, you mentioned the finance sector. I have a friend, a very good friend, who works in that sector, and he's just been told that he's got to start going back into the office even more than he was. So I think previously it was something like he had to do a total of 16 hours a month in the office. He could choose how he did that, whether he went in 2 full days or did 4 half days, he could choose. He's now been told that that number is now doubled, 32 or something around that sort of number hours that he has to do in the office every single month. And he's a bit like that going. So basically now I have to spend 45 minutes sitting in a traffic jam trying to get into the office for 9 o'clock in the morning on several occasions in a month. Whereas what I could have done was just get up in the morning and then get straight on with work, and felt better, felt more productive, just got on with it and been happy. Whereas now I'm getting to the office on those days that I've got to go in feeling grumpy before I've even set in the door because of the fact that the travel time to get here has been ridiculous. And I really do feel his and everybody else that is experiencing that. I feel their pain with it. I am so lucky where I am right now. Yes, I have my own office. I rent a very, very small room in what is just a building full of tenanted offices. But I choose to do that because I get more done here than I do at home. If I try and work at home, then I will, in terms of what happens in my head, is that I start going, oh, I should do the washing. Oh, I should put the hoover around. Oh, I should do this. Oh, I should do that. And then when my partner comes home and the kids are at home, you know, Amelia's home from school, I then go, oh, I should give them attention and we should do stuff together, yada, yada, yada. And so therefore my attention is taken completely away and I'm not focused on working. So I come into the office for me, for my own productivity when it comes to my business and to my work. If I was working for someone and it was in a role which wasn't customer facing, and you didn't have to be there in person to do it, you know, like literally you could go, what's my job description? Blah, 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 blah. Can I do all of that anywhere in the world? Well, yes, I can. So I would feel aggrieved now at this point of time, I think, that I had to go and be in a specific place at a specific time to get that done. In my opinion, and I know I'm not the only person that thinks this, it is simply because of the fact that these companies are tied into long leaseholds on buildings that they can't get out of, again, because of the cost of living crisis, because of what we went through with COVID. You know, you've got to think about the fact there is somebody that is a landlord of those buildings that is relying on the income from leasing that building out for their own, you know, well-being and their own, finances. And so because of that, that's why they're bringing people back into the office. It is just simply to justify the expense on the rent, on the lease. And I do feel therefore sorry for the people that are affected by that. And I tried to say to my friend, I understand and I feel your pain with this. And I understand completely why you really are annoyed with the powers that be. It's not necessarily his line manager, of course. It's not necessarily somebody he's ever met. You're just annoyed with the powers that be that you're being forced to do this. But the reason is, you know, this, and let's try and let you see what it is. And now can you understand that this is why they're not going to just let people not be in there at all and therefore not have any reason for paying it and not be able to get out of paying it either. It's the fact is that they're not asking you to go back 40 hours a week to the office. It's only 30 or whatever it is a month. So try and see it from the other way. To go back to your original question, I just think that I know for a fact with that particular friend, not that he's got anything that he knows that he could go and do necessarily. He's never said to me, I'd love to start my own business making, I don't know, lights for weddings, or I don't know what it would be. But I get the feeling that he just isn't even able to look for another job at the moment because the risk is too great. He has got a job that pays him a good amount of money, that covers all of his bills and his expenditure every month. And if he was to start looking at somewhere else, the risk is far too big that he might go somewhere else. The grass isn't greener on the other side. That doesn't work out. And then it's in a bit of a spiral of, going downwards. So he sees it as being a case of that's too much of a risk. Whereas at the time that I quit my job, I was at the point where I couldn't stay doing what I was doing for the company that I was doing it for without my mental health suffering. And so I had to make the change, whether it was to go and do what I did and start my own business or to go and find another job. Originally, that had been the idea. The plan had always been start looking for other jobs, start applying for things, start doing stuff. And one day at work, I had had enough. And I literally wrote my notice and left it on the table in the office for my manager to find the next morning. And that was it. 2 weeks later, I'd served my notice and I was out of there. Those 2 weeks were the most difficult 2 weeks of my life because obviously I had to go home to my partner and say, I've just quit. And I know we don't have anything actually there for me to go and do. And she was like, I can't believe you've done that. You said you wouldn't do that. It was hard for those 2 weeks. But I spent those 2 weeks proving to her that I could do something that I have now done. So it was the hardest 2 weeks, but also the best 2 weeks.
Yeah, I hear you. As you mentioned, and it's weird that you mentioned that about your friend because that's a very different kind of risk. So as you said, I feel everybody is definitely a risk taker, whether it's something simple, for want of a better description, as asking your partner to marry you or deciding to have a child, bring a child into the world. Is it risky to wear flip-flops and socks on the beach because you're going to get mocked? And then you come to the main life-changing risks, obviously. So yeah, it's hopefully the world will start to get back in a bit of a queue where it enables people to have the confidence to at least try and find some happiness outside or as part of their workday. Because obviously if you've got happiness in your personal life, having it in your work life is just a really, really nice bonus to have for sure. Well, speaking of risks, obviously you've taken a risk, as any guest does, to come on a show because you don't know what's going to come your way. So let's find out what question number 3 brings up. Okay, you're a tech person, or you're certainly someone that's around tech and use it in your day-to-day job, Charles. So question number 3. What would you do if you couldn't use the internet or watch TV? And I'm going to include watch TV as YouTube, so that's part of the internet, for a month.
Cry. I mean, if I just throw this out there first of all, if I couldn't use the internet for a month, my business would go under. So that would be that. But we're not going to go down that route.
No.
If I couldn't use the internet or watch TV for a month, what would I do? It would be a very, very difficult 30 odd days for sure. I'm a big consumer of media. I have always loved, my true love is radio. That has always been from when I was very, very young. I did the whole cliched thing of taping the songs off the radio and then using them to create my own radio shows and all this, that, and the other. And then my love just extends towards television. And, the internet is now a big part of that. As you said, you're going to include YouTube. I think I probably watch YouTube far too much to not be paying for the premium version, if I'm honest, and I don't. I watch. There are so many things that I am subscribed to that are fantastic, and I love watching. You know, I watch people that basically are building Lego cities, that are playing, you know, Football Manager, the game. I watch people that are, you know, documenting lower league football or soccer clubs. You know, all of this, many different things, daily vlogs and loads of different stuff. I absolutely adore it, but I will always come back to television as being the thing that I am happy to sit down and just properly consume. I kind of use YouTube as that thing. I know a lot of people do this, where YouTube has become the thing that you just need something on in the background and you're not really bothered about it, and you don't need to necessarily go full focus into it. You know, you're making your lunch, you're doing the washing up, whatever it is. You just need something on in the background that you can watch. Then I will use YouTube. But for the evening, I will always come back to the television. And I'll come back to, these days, it's the streaming channels, you know, Netflix, iPlayer for the BBC, Disney Plus, all of that. And I will watch, I mean, my favourite show, I'm a massive Whovian, so Doctor Who is my beloved. My partner is a Trekkie. She will stick Star Trek Voyager on and happily just sit there for weeks, not moving. So if I couldn't do that, I would really have to find something to distract me from the fact that I can't do it, because it would be really hard. And I'm going to take into all of this, I'm going to add in that I can't watch my DVD collection, my Blu-ray collection either, because I can't watch TV. So that means the TV isn't there.
Hardcore.
So I can't go and watch Doctor Who, which I've got everything. I can't watch Star Trek, which we've got pretty much everything. I can't watch all the MCU, which I've got everything pretty much. I would therefore really have to distract myself. So I would probably do a lot more running than I do now. I still go out 2-3 times a week at the moment. So, I mean, it would be a lot of running I'd be doing extra on top of that. Do you know what I might do is that I might do something creative. When I was young, my parents bought me a Hornby train set. I must have been probably 7 or 8, something like that. And I remember at the time actually being a little bit disappointed it wasn't a Scalextrics. And I think from what I remember, if my memory serves me correctly, I think I showed that I was a bit disappointed that it wasn't the Scalextrics as well. But from what I understand, the Hornby train set had been chosen because it was more what my dad wanted. And so my dad was a bit more like, no, I'd rather help him do the train set than a Scalextrics. Fine. As a dad now, I completely understand where he's coming from with that. I didn't understand it at the time. I was like, why didn't you just get me the thing I wanted? Spoilt brat, I obviously was. So what I have started doing recently is, I say recently, the last few years, every September, I take as if I'm in charge of this. I'm not at all. We go down to my brother-in-law. So my partner's brother lives in Broadstairs in Kent, which is near Margate, which is the home of Hornby. And there is I can't remember what it's called now. We might have to fact check this, Danny. But there is a museum that is dedicated to Hornby trains, Scalextrics, Corgi, I think it is, the model, vehicles. And there's another thing, because now that all those different things are all owned. Yeah, they're all owned by the same company. So it's in the original factory where Hornby was. But we went last year to this place, and it's great because there's loads of train layouts that are there. There's a Scalextrics big layout that you play on. It's brilliant. It's fantastic. And there's also an amazing shop, an absolutely amazing shop. And I have a fairly old now, it's a good 10 years or so. So in terms of how tech moves on very quickly, it's quite old. I've got a Scalextrics pack with like I think they're two Porsches, 911s or something like that. And it's already quite big. We don't have the biggest house in the world. If you lay it out, that's a full room done, right? You can't do anything else. But I still very, very nearly bought every single expansion pack, more cars, all the digital transformation pack and all this, that and the other, and was like, I'm going to do this. This will be great. I didn't. I stopped myself from doing it. But if I didn't have access to the TV or internet for a whole month, I think I would be going and creating a Scalextrics track. I would be going and buying. I would take all the money that I would save on not paying for the streaming sites like Netflix and Disney Plus, etc. I take all of that money and I would go and put it into the hands of whoever owns Hornby and Scalextrics now and say, give me, what can I have in return for this? And I would take it home and I would create it and I would just play every spare moment that I had. I'd include the kids, of course I would. It'd be a big part of doing it. And it would help obviously distract them from not having the internet and telly, CBeebies especially, which is constantly on in our house. And I'd just play. And it would be, creating a track, then getting the cars to go around it. That is probably what I would do.
I like it. I remember having a Scalextrics, and I'm not sure if that's like a very British thing or if it's like a global thing, but Scalextrics, in case you're unaware, is a racing track, like a racing car track. It's got a lot of slots in the middle of the track, and the car sticks to the slots, and you go race each other around the track. And I remember being a kid back in the UK, and Scalextric was always a big thing. And then TCR, Total Control Racing, came out, and everybody wanted that because you could swap lanes, you could have lights come on and stuff, and it just looked really cool. But Scalextric is still around. I don't think TCR is. I think Scalextric maybe have bought them and integrated in. But that'd be a great thing to do. Like you say, you can involve your family, get your friends around, get really competitive.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I watch, like, literally, if you go on, I mean, you couldn't do this if we're sticking to the rules of the question, but you go onto Instagram or Facebook or wherever and search slot car racing, the amount of videos that are there, and it just looks epic. People are literally taking actual real life circuits and recreating them using their Scalextrics or whatever it is that their slot car is made by, and recreating those tracks and then racing. And it's moved on so much since we were kids, Danny. As you say, you can change lanes now. You can also, because it's digitalized, you can do things like mind-blowing, where literally you can use an app to determine, right, on lap 10, it's going to come into the pits. You can still control the cars. You can still do the driving with the little trigger handheld things or the little ones with the circle steering wheel on the side, handheld things. But you can make it so that it knows that in 10 laps time you're going to come into the pits, and it will wait there and it will do a randomized amount of time that it's in the pits for. So you might be sat there going, what's going on? Why hasn't it? And in your mind you're going, someone's not put a wheel nut bolt on or something. Oh no, there's danger in the pits. They've got over. Oh my. All of this imagination just comes straight. It looks amazing. And I would absolutely love to have enough disposable income to buy not just a bigger set or more parts, but also like a sort of a bigger office or somewhere, a warehouse that I could put it into that would then be infinitely large enough for me to just carry on making and building it and adding to it. I have spent hours trawling the internet, looking at what people have done with their Scalextrics tracks and just gone, wow. And some of them are huge, but some of them, would fit in your average sized sort of bedroom that, obviously has nothing else in it but the Scalextric. But you do look at it and just go, wowzers. Either somebody's got an amazing imagination or you've got far too much money. It's probably both.
Probably both,
but, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, I like that. If someone has Scalextric as a way back as a kid, I would totally go with you on that, mate, for sure. This part's brought to you by someone awesome. We'll be back with more questions in a sec.
Hey, I'm Makul Hooley, and I host The Life Shift, a podcast about the moments that divide our lives into before and after. Each week, I sit down with someone who's lived through a major turning point, and we talk honestly about how it shaped them. The stories are vulnerable, sometimes messy, but always real. If you love narratives that reveal who we really are underneath the surface, I'd love for you to listen. Just search The Life Shift on your favorite podcast app.
Hey there, Danny here. This podcast will forever be free to listen to, but if you enjoy 5 Random Questions and get value from the show and want to support it, you can do that with a donation of your choosing over at 5randomquestions.com/support. And thanks so much for supporting the show. Now, back to this week's episode. So on that note, and being grateful for actually having internet, let's see what question number 4 brings up. Okay, yeah. Question 4, Charles. If you knew you only had 24 hours left to live, what would you do?
Cool, that's a huge one, isn't it?
Throwing in a deep one out of the blue there.
I mean, we started off with one that was pretty deep, right? Or it ended up being. And now we've got this. Wowzers. If you only had 24 hours left to live, what would you do? I mean, I am an incredibly emotional person. And I am someone that, today, for instance, my daughter, she went for her first transition day to her new high school that she'll start in September. And she went off to it this morning, really looking forward to it. And I waved her off out the door and watched her walk away. And I couldn't help but just think, I wish she was still that little tiny bundle of baby that she was 11 years ago. And when she came home from school, I let her in the door. She came in, I gave her a big hug, and I asked her about her day. I asked her if she'd enjoyed it, and she'd loved it. She's found out who's in her form and all of this sort of stuff. And she's got a couple of her friends from primary school in her form, which is brilliant, including her best friend, which is great. And I just gave her a big hug, and I just told her that I was so proud of her for the person that she is becoming. But at the same time, and I'm getting emotional thinking about it now, and at the same time, I really miss the little Amelia, the tiny, baby, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old, every single Amelia that we've had as she's growing up. And I got a little bit upset in front of her. I had to apologise to her, and I said, I'm really sorry, Daddy's just being silly. I therefore think that if I knew that there was only 24 hours left to go for me, I would have to spend every waking moment with my 2 kids and my partner, Nicola, my mum, my dad, my sister, Nick's family as well. I'd probably just be like going, come on, we're all doing something, we're all going somewhere, and we'll go and do something or other. I mean, I would want to fit in so many different things. So here's the thing. So with the setup being that absolutely everything that I'm about to say would have to happen with all of those people present, I would have to go and watch Northampton Town Football Club play one last time. I'd have to. And if they weren't playing, I'd rock up and I'd bang on the door and I'd say, you better start a match right now. Get on with it. I'd probably sit down and watch a Doctor Who episode. That would have to happen. I'd have to. And I mean, it'd be very, very difficult to know which episode, let alone, well, blimey, which Doctor to even choose, let alone which episode. It would be so hard. I might have to actually, when we finished recording that, I might have to start like making a list and working out if I ever actually come across this situation in real life, which touch wood, I won't. I need to know, because I can't be wasting hours working out which episodes I need to watch. So I think I'll probably start working that out at some point soon. So I'll have to do that. I'd probably record a podcast. I'd probably get into my office and just record something. It would be like my last, not last will and testament, but, you know, my last thoughts. It would be the last thing that I'd put out there. And I'd probably do it, and then I'd put it out on the internet, and I'd make sure that I uploaded it to a certain hosting provider that both me and you love, that I won't mention just in case that Mark doesn't pay you. I would put it out there, and I would be turning around to all those family and friends and going, now you've got to promote the heck out of it, because if you don't tell anyone, it won't actually get heard. So please do more promotion than I have actually done work making this happen. And if you're a podcaster listening, there is a hint in there somewhere. I would, on top of that, go to the pub and go and have a beer, because I like pubs. I spent 15 years of my life working in pubs. I loved it. I loved the interaction with customers. I loved the actual job. I loved looking after beer. I loved doing all of it. Didn't like the cleaning so much, but, you know, who does? So I'd need to go to the pub, and I therefore have to go to the pub with my friends. And it's not just you're close, you're really close mates. Like, I go out to the pub most Fridays. It's not every Friday, but most Fridays we go to the pub. There's 4 of us. And I would say out of the 4 of us, I'm probably closer to 2 of them than I am the other one. Still friends, don't get me wrong here. But then there's more than just those 3 people that we then meet in the pub and we talk to every week. You know, they're acquaintances. They're not friends. They're not anything. But the only place I ever see them is in that particular pub. But we chat and we have a good time and we enjoy each other's company. I'd want to spend at least some of that day with them. And I think as well, I would probably do some other little bits and pieces that are just, I suppose, tying up loose ends almost. I'd go for a walk just for, you know, clearing my head. I'd probably do that on my own. I'd definitely then go out for a run with my running club friends. I'd make sure that a big group of us went out and just did 5K or something, just to do it one last time. I'd then do the daft things, like I'd take my car onto the motorway and I'd see how fast it can go. I'd do it very late at night. I'd be very as safe as you can be, right? I'm not, you know, saying that you should do this. I always remember my dad, when I was younger, where we lived in Northamptonshire, there's the A1, which is the original long stretch of road that connected Edinburgh to London. And there didn't used to be any speed cameras on the A1 at one point in time, way back when. And my dad used to, after he'd got a new car, a couple of weeks later, once it had warmed up, he used to say, "You don't want to do it too early, son." He never talked like that because he's not from North. But, you know, he'd say, you need to give it time to bed in. And then I'd go and see how fast it could actually go. And I'd take it to the A1. And I never got, I did that. I was able to do it with my very first car. My first car was a Renault 5. Renault 5, little Renault 5, lovely. They've just brought back an electric version that I really want to buy. So, I mean, that might be another thing that I would do, is I just go and buy that. I managed to take that onto the A1, see how fast that could do. It got to 93, which is a bit of a letdown, I'll be honest. It had a choke and everything, Danny, so you know how old it was. So I'd probably do something similar. I'd take my current car, which is a Kia Sportage, which will definitely go faster than 93 miles an hour, I'm telling you. Not because I know through experience, but because I've seen tests, he says, with a glint in his eye.
A little glint there.
And I would go and I would take it somewhere. And because I know that I'm not going to be here the next day, the car's registered to me, it's going to be obvious that it's me driving it because of the way cameras are these days. And I'd smile as I went through them. They wouldn't have to be being paid. So therefore, I would just go, I'd probably take it somewhere like the M62 and then just floor it and see how fast I could really make it go. That'd be something else. I would do it as safely as possible. I reiterate that again. I'd close off the road to make sure I was the only one on it, etc. So yeah, there's far too many things that I'd actually, want to do than I could definitely do, I think. But I think that I would have to do as many things as possible, because knowing me and knowing how I am, I would very easily spend that 24 hours on my own crying, because I think that is actually the reality, is that if I knew that it was the end, then that's how it would start. It would start with a lot of tears and a lot of pain and anguish, I think, which is a horrible way to end this little monologue. But I therefore know that inside I would need to do as much as possible, pack as much stuff in as possible to make sure that I had the best last 24 hours ever.
Well, and that's it. I think even though obviously it's sad that it would be your last 24 hours on the planet, I feel it's like almost a privilege as well to know this is happening. So, like so many people just drop down dead or get hit by a bus or anything like that and taken away without, prior knowledge. So I feel almost like it's like a little privilege where you can plan ahead and really make sure that for the people that are left behind, they leave you with a high, so to speak, right? But I do like the fast cars. I used to try and get my little Ford Fiesta 1.1 litre screaming down the M62 between, Hawick, which is in the Scottish borders, back to Bradford, where I lived and worked at the time. And that was always fun, mate.
It is always fun. I mean, it's very illegal, but fun.
But fun. Well, that was a bit more of a serious question, which sometimes happens on the show, which is why I love the format so much, because it does open up so many different questions. So let's see if we can finish on a little bit more of a kind of like a happier one, so to speak. So here we go. Charles, question number 5 on the Random Questions hot seat. Who is the most famous person you have met?
Most famous is quite hard to determine, right? Because that could mean anything. Because I could think somebody is really famous and you kind of go, who? Whereas, yeah, you could turn around and say, oh, I met this person who is really famous, and I could just be like, oh, so what? Not bothered by it. And at the same time, I've met quite a few famous people, but to try and then put them in a ranking and put somebody at the top is quite difficult, I think. I met Nick Grimshaw at the podcast show a couple of years ago. Nick Grimshaw is a radio presenter here in the UK. He was the Radio 1 breakfast show host. He's now currently on the breakfast show on Six Music. But he also used to do, a long time ago now, he used to do an evening show on Radio 1, which was very, very good, quite late at night, sort of 10 o'clock in the evening, which was really good. And I always do think that as much as we all cover in radio the breakfast show as being the biggest show on any station, doesn't matter which one it is, actually the best shows happen in the evening. They're the ones where the presenters are actually allowed a little bit more leeway. They're given a little bit more on that length of rope for them to just go and play. And that evening show was great. I mean, I go back and I know no one can see this, but behind me I have, the famous Kallax unit from IKEA, which is the squares unit of squares, if you're not sure. And one of those squares is devoted to books. Now, most of them are business books and things, but there is always one book here. And the reason why it's in here amongst all of the business books that I have, bear in mind, we've got things like Jessica Abel's On the Wire, which is, if you're a podcast producer or a podcaster, you should get it. It's a graphic novel. It's not a book. It's a graphic novel, but it is fantastic, telling you how all the greats that work in audio create their stories, do storytelling. It's brilliant. But alongside that, and a copy of Radio Production, the 5th edition by McLeish, which is something that anybody that has ever done radio or studied radio in any way, shape or form will know. I've had that book since I started university. I refer back to it now. It is as old as, it's probably earlier than 2003, the 5th edition, but there you go. That's the kind of book that is on this shelf. But there is one that stands out, and it's John Peel's autobiography. John Peel was the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest radio DJ of them all. He was a champion of new music. He was so knowledgeable about the music industry and about bands and artists. And while his show was probably heavily leaning towards sort of guitars and that kind of genre, he still knew everything about every type of music. It was fantastic and sadly missed. And he's an absolute legend, and he is the person that really, truly, honestly made me want to be on the radio. And I've read that book so many times. He passed away far too soon. My radio station when I was at university, the student radio station we had at the time that I actually arrived at the university, they had a new radio building being built. So my first year we were in this little broom cupboard thing where there was carpet on the desk. It was very rudimentary. We moved into, in my second year, these purpose-built radio studios. There were 3 actual studios in this little building. One of them was specifically for the student radio station, and then you had 2 others that could be used by us, the students, when we were doing our work. And what was Studio 2, so this was one of the other studios that wasn't the one that was being used by the student radio station, that was John Peel's studio. And that was the one I always booked out to go and use. I never booked the other one because I just had to use John Peel's one. Even though John Peel never set foot in Warrington at campus and the university, never had a clue. He was already gone at this point. And it was just like, what a tribute to an absolute legend. So that book sits there, and I wish I had met him. I really do. The point in this is that, going back to, meeting Nick Grimshaw at the podcast show, pretty big. He was on Radio 1 Breakfast Show. And I guess really my big sort of most famous people would all come from radio. In that sense, but I don't think in terms of like the biggest, but I'm trying to think. I know that there is going to be somebody in the back of my mind that afterwards I'll go, of course I should have mentioned this person. It's so hard when these questions, they really are random. We really do not get to prepare. I'm just like, I'm going, I've met lots of sports people as well, but again, how do you rank them as to who was the most famous out of all of them? And again, I think a lot of them would be rugby league players. So most people in the world would go, who? So that probably wouldn't really necessarily do anything. Do you know what? I will tell this story because she is pretty famous. She's on the TV. She's still on the TV to this day. When I was very young, and maybe 10 or so, where we lived in rural Northamptonshire, there was like an annual carnival or festival or some kind of event that happened in a big field. Not as big as Glastonbury, but one of these big sort of fields. And there was some kind of like festival going on there. My parents packed us off, me and my sister, my mum and dad, all of us packed off into the car to drive 45 minutes down the road to wherever this festival was happening, to go and see it. And I remember we stopped at a petrol station at some point between home and the place that we were going. And it was just a normal petrol station. And we got there, and from what I can remember, we were literally just stopping to put petrol in. And yet, who was there but a young, as she would have been then, a young Michaela Strachan. And not only was she wasn't just at this petrol station just topping her own car up with petrol or anything like that. No. She was there doing something. She was there for a reason. She had animals with her in these little cage type things, and she'd get them out. But it was just like, Michaela Strachan. And as a kid who was really, really into the Really Wild show with Terry Nutkins, Michaela Strachan, I can't remember the other guy that was on it. I was just like, wow, this is Michaela. And I remember being like, it's Michaela Strachan. And I just remember speaking to Michaela Strachan as a very, very, very young boy. She must have been 20, quite young, early in her career, more or less. And like now I watch her on Springwatch and I think, I've met you. You've shown me a tawny owl or something, She's probably is the most left field and yet most famous person that I can think of right here and right now. And it happened a long, 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 long time ago, Danny, in the most ridiculous place as well.
But it's like, I mean, I loved watching her on the same show, mate. It was always fascinating. And you learn so much from her because she made it fun to learn, as did Terry Nutkins. And the other presenter, the co-presenter, who neither of us can remember his name. So we apologise. I will find out who that is and put a link in the show notes. And I'll link back to, I'm sure there's going to be YouTube videos of that TV show. So I hear you. And yeah, you're right. It's like, it's varying levels, right? Who's famous to you because of your career or your interests, etc. Unless they're at stratosphere, like a Tom Cruise or someone like that. It can be very geared towards personal experience, etc. But I love the fact you met Michaela Strachan. That'd be awesome. That'd be a nice one for me to meet as someone that enjoyed watching her on the TV.
Who would you say is your most famous person you've met, Danny?
I don't know, because when I first moved to Canada, I did a lot of freelance work for a music website as I was going through my equivalent of the green card process. And I met a lot of indie music people that are now bigger names. They might not be bigger names to a lot of people, but they're now bigger names in the grand scheme of things. So Tom McRae, I interviewed Tom McRae, who's very UK indie creator, who Brandy Carlisle interviewed, met and interviewed her. So people like that. From my own point of view, I've probably not met really famous people. My grandma used to get Sean Connery delivered milk to her when he was a teenager, before he became into the bodybuilding and the James Bond and all that. As a teenager, back in South Queensferry, which is just outside Edinburgh, he had a milk around and he delivered to my granny. And there's a whole bunch of stories that my granny could tell about that, which we won't go into because it's a family show. But so probably vicariously through my grandma, James Bond. That's what I'm going to say.
Nice. I like that. That is very good. By the way, it was Chris Packham. How did we not know that?
There we go.
It was Chris Packham. So who obviously is co-presenting Springwatch with Michaela Strachan these days. So there you go.
Perfect. It's always good to see your childhood famous people still going. Yes. Going back to that old age question, right? What do you consider old? Well, Michaela Strachan's still doing the thing, and Chris Pacham's still doing the thing. Do we class them old? No, not at all, because they're part of our childhood.
I'm trying to think now, because there are obviously, there's a lot of people that we'd have grown up watching on the TV, and you sort of think, are they maybe not around anymore in terms of you don't see them on the telly, and you sort of go, well, are they still alive even? You might think to yourself, there's plenty of people. Tony Hart, for instance, who definitely is no longer with us, and lots of different people that I can sort of think about. And who are they? But I mean, I sort of go back to, so I was always a BBC kid when it came to children's TV when I was young. And so, I remember, I think probably Andy Peters was the main presenter for the Broom Cupboard as it was back then. I mean, there was Philip Schofield before him, but I don't think we're allowed to talk about him anymore. So
we'll zip that one out.
Yeah. So but I know Andy Peters is still around. I mean, he's not necessarily front of camera anymore these days, or at least not that much, but he's very, very much behind the camera, producer level in TV, and very, very well, regarded in the industry. And whenever I've seen him appearing on the TV, he looks pretty much the same as he always did. You know, if anything, he looks even better these days. So it's one of those where you kind of go, well, I watched you when I was a kid. So I would have been at most a teenager, you know, sort of 15 when you were on the TV doing that. And at the time, you must have been in your 20s at the earliest. So therefore, how old, you sort of go, well, how old are you now? Yeah, are you? Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? How
good genes, mate. Some of us are blessed. Some of us, like me, are not. So good genes, mate. Good genes. But I like that. It's a nice way to finish off after a little bit more of a deeper one.
Yes.
Prior. So, Charles, we've reached the end of your time in the hot seat, and I think we've survived it fairly well. As is only fair, because you've been in the hot seat for the last about an hour or so, one of our longer episodes. I loved it. It's only fair that I throw the baton over to you, good sir. So it's time for your question for me.
Yes. So this question I've chosen, it is random, but I've chosen it because something happened with me and my friends over the past sort of, week specifically, but has happened. We've talked about this a few times over the last couple of years down the pub. So the question is, Danny, is there a fashion that has come back around that you absolutely hate?
Ooh. I can't think because, so I'm a bit of a hermit. I'm fortunate to work remotely full time. My wife is, and we live in a little village that's pretty much away from civilization. So you don't really see a lot of people wandering about the streets and stuff like that. I'm trying to think if there's a fashion to actually. No, I don't think it's a fashion. So for me, I would have said chinos, but I think chinos has always been around. Have just come and gone, and they're not quite as ridiculous as when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I've seen more kids now, and maybe this is just like the generation, but a lot more kids, teens, like my son's age, that have got mullets, really, really bad mullets.
Yes.
And it's clearly a choice because I don't think it's the parents forcing them because they seem very comfortable in their skin, which is great. And I'm thinking, why? Why?
Yeah. Yes, you're right. So this is exactly it. This is part of it. So a year or so ago, me and my friends noticed that there's become this trend of where the younger generation are now wearing socks with their what we would call flip-flops, but they call sliders because that's not as cool as say.
They're not sliders, mate. I've got to correct you. They're slides. My son corrects me so many times because he does that. He wears socks with his slides, and I'm saying they're sliders. Oh, so don't say that to my son.
Oh, crikey. Okay. But to me, that's ridiculous. You don't wear socks with open shoes, open-toed shoes, essentially. Let's bracket them all into that. So Crocs, that's another one that could just get in the bin. But that wasn't around, I don't think, in the first place when I was younger. So that's fine. I just don't get it. And I don't get why they're looking. And then you're right. Recently, there's just a lot of mullets going on. And I don't know whether you've noticed, because I'm not sure. I know you mentioned the rugby league before, but rugby union right now as well. The British and Irish Lions are down under in Australia. And there's an awful lot, and I think this has been the case anyway in Australia, but there's an awful lot of not only mullets, but mullets and tashes. You know, very 80s, very stereotypical Australian 80s. But it's not just on the Australian players, it's on the flipping Lions players. And I'm just looking at it and going, oh my word, what is going on? I just can't stand it. I just look at it and just go, if I'd gone to school wearing white socks pulled up, you know, I'd have been derided. I'd have been teased. And yet now, my daughter, not only does she wear white socks, but she then tucks her, you know, tracksuit bottoms into the bottom of her socks. And I just think, what are you doing? You look ridiculous. That isn't allowed. That is a crime against fashion and everything and all that is. Stop it immediately. And she's like, oh, Dad, you're so old. And I'm like, no, behave yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror. And she goes, everyone wears it like this. And you're just like, oh, no. And I just think to myself, how have we as a generation, how have we as a bunch of millennials allowed this to happen? How have we given birth and raised this generation to believe that it's okay to wear socks with your flip-flops and then call them something ridiculous instead of flip-flops? How is it okay for you to grow your hair into a mullet and think it looks cool? How is it okay that you're going to add a mustache to this as well? I mean, there are words and names that shouldn't be repeated that you would get called if you ever looked like that, or you saw someone when you were a kid who had a mullet and a tash. They would get names assigned to them. And yet here we are, allowing our children. It's shocking, and something should be done.
I know. Bring back, what is it? National
Service.
National Service. Bring back National Service. Get them in the armies, get their hair shaved. That'll teach them it.
Oh, Dan, we've gone right back to the beginning now, and we can answer that question of how old is old. We are.
You're old if socks and slides and mullets are out of fashion. Well, that was a nice way to bring everything full circle, Charles, and I really appreciated this and enjoyed this chat. For people that want to know about your new podcast or existing podcast, for the work that you do with your agency, or just, send you random pictures of their mullets, where's the best place to connect with you and find out more about you?
I would say there's two places to come and connect with me. The first one is on LinkedIn. Come and just find me, connect me, send me a message, say hey. Just don't start your message with something that you want to sell me, please. That's the only caveat that I would give. Come and connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you don't want to connect with me as such and have to actually talk to me and things like that, you can follow me on Instagram. Basically, just search at Charles Commins. I'm sure Danny will put a link into the show notes for both of those. But yeah, I'm on there most days. Come and check out my stories. I tend to use it a bit like a vlog. And you can see what I'm doing day to day. And then my grid is usually more of this is the big stuff. These are the things that I really want to show. So yeah, come along, find me. All the information about all my podcasts are on there. It's the Warrington Scoop. It's All Cobblers to Me is the other one. If you want to find out more and become an avid fan of Northampton Town, then come and join us. I promise it's not a cult. Yeah, come and say hello. It'd be great. And if you're a podcaster, I have to mention it. If you're a podcaster, please come along. Join our community of brilliant, like-minded podcasters at Mike's Podcast Club. We are doing monthly meetups online, so it doesn't matter where in the world you are. They're just done on Zoom. And we just get together. We either have guest speakers to come and talk about a particular subject, or we open it up to the whole room and the whole community for our podcasting Q&A, where basically you come in with a bit of a problem that you've had that month regarding your podcast, and you share it with the group, and then the community of podcasters that have got many different experiences, they will try and help you get through it, either through the fact that they've experienced it themselves and they'll tell you how they dealt with it, or they'll just give ideas that they've got. But either way, we are all coming together to help each other to make better podcasts. So come and check that out. We're at Mike's Podcast Club on Twitter. And you can join us at meetup.com/MICPOD. And it's completely free.
Perfect. And as Charles mentioned, I will leave links to all of that in the show notes as usual. So if you're listening to this in your favourite podcast app or even online, be sure to check the episode show notes out, and that'll all link through to Charles. So again, mate, really appreciate you coming down today. Down, you're not even here. Coming online today to the green room and sitting in the 5 random questions hot seat.
Thank you, Danny. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening to 5 Random Questions. If you enjoyed this week's episode, I'd love for you to leave a review on the app you're currently listening on, or over at 5randomquestions.com/review. And if you know someone else that would enjoy the show, be sure to send them this way. It's very much appreciated. Until the next time, keep asking those questions.